Welcome to CashTalk, the podcast where we delve into the depths of finance, business, and life itself. I'm your host, John Cachia, a multi-award-winning wealth advisor with a passion for empowering ambitious Australians to confidently achieve financial freedom. Hey everyone, before we get started, this is a quick reminder that everything in this podcast is of a general nature and nothing has been tailored to your personal circumstances. So please seek personal financial advice before acting on this information. Hello everyone and welcome to CashTalk, and today I am joined by Lucy Percy. How are you?
Hi John, how are you?
Not bad. Now, Lucy is an estate planning expert and we've been working together with a lot of our clients for many years now, helping them through some of their estate planning needs. But a lot of our clients tend to be also not what I would say what people think they need to go to an estate planning lawyer for. Most of our clients are young families who, for some people, might think it's just basic and don't need an estate planning lawyer. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to get Lucy on today and explain some of the intricacies with estate planning and how it intertwines with financial planning, especially for young families. Now, this is also great for people generally when it comes to estate planning, because a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today do have the same impact when you're talking about things like grandparents and blended families and whatnot. So hopefully you get a lot out of the episode today, and I can't wait to dive in. So,
Thanks, John.
Lucy, before we get started, how'd you start in estate planning? I've really never asked you that.
Oh, really? Okay. When I finished university, I door knocked and just letter dropped all around where I lived at the time in Hawthorne, and I got a job at a law firm. And they're still fantastic. Referred a client to them yesterday. And they were a true general practice firm, so did everything but family and criminal law. And it was fantastic grounding because estate planning intersects with every area of law. When you die, if you die with a business, you need to know a little bit about commercial, you need to know a little bit about property. So it was just really interesting. When I had my first child, I was actually only a lawyer for a year, so I was a really junior lawyer. And then when I had my second, I went to my boss and I said, I need to niche down. Like, working part-time, it is just too hard to try and be across all areas. And I really loved estate planning and deceased estates. And so that's what we did. We limited my clients to just that. And yeah, it worked really, really well because there's just, even today, there's still much to learn. So it was a really good decision for me early on.
It was interesting for me that when I got into this space, I realised that estate planning is a very niche and a very specialisation. And now being much more aware on estate planning and what it means, I can also see how many families have got it wrong.
Yeah, well, you would see that.
Yeah, and we see how we got it wrong. So, and it's not that I don't think that the lawyers are intentionally setting up things wrong for them or people are doing it wrong. It's just there's a difference between generalisation and specialisation.
Yeah.
One of the ones that really was important for me and my wife when we went through the process of going through our estate planning. And just so everyone knows, we started this very, very early on in our relationship. Like, this was one of the biggest things that I wanted to start straight away, was having a conversation around what's our estate going to look like and what's the wishes of that estate. What can we do while we're living? Yeah, because when we're not here, how is that going to play out? But I do remember one of the biggest things was around potential guardians of our children and future children. I now have 3 children, and for me, it felt like it's not a do it and forget about it process.
No.
So let's just dive into that decision making, because I know it's a hot topic with a lot of young families around, if something happens to me, what happens to my children, like for my funds for my kids, and how do my kids get looked after? And then making decisions on who takes care of what and who has decisions on that. Yeah,
I'm so glad you started with this, because it is a decision that is stopping people getting their wills done. So we really need to tackle it. And I suppose, like, my first honest answer is the guardianship clause in your will is not binding. Do not let the striving for perfection in an estate plan stopping you from having one. So if somebody comes to me and they say that, I just say, forget it. Like, we'll talk about it in the meeting, and I'm going to be surprised if I can't help you pick a person. But if we really can't, then we're just going to sign your will without it, and you're going to sleep on it for 6 months. And when you're ready, we'll come back and put it back in for free. And, sometimes there are caveats around that. But that's my best advice. Like, just get cracking, and we'll either fix it while we're working together, or if it's a huge problem, we really will do it later. But don't let it stop everything else.
Because it is a real mind block. Yeah. If we think about it as parents, it's like I never want to picture myself having to do that with my children, but I have to do. But I have
No
to do
one's
it.
you. It's so sad to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you
Yeah.
go through all of those emotional mind blocks, but logically speaking,
Pick a person.
pick
I'm like, pick me.
yeah,
I'll do it. I have to stop myself in meetings being like, I'll have your kids.
yeah, pick a person. Yeah.
Totally.
Because it's like, you'd rather, in my opinion anyway, you'd rather put it with someone that you think will be 80% good than someone that you potentially don't know, and then it's up to choice. And so, what does happen when they don't have that addressed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not to plug myself, but on my website, I have a 25-minute course on how to choose a guardian for your children.
Okay, good.
And I talk about this, and I'm like, here are my tips. Yeah. A couple of them, I mean, obviously, we just talk about who's in your life. There's a worksheet that I can give. If it's a partner, in a couple, it's like write down, are they aligned on values? Is religion a factor? Is where they live a factor? Are your kids old enough and they need to stay in the community? I just say to them, tell me who's in your life, and then tell me why not those people. Sometimes it's about encouraging them to ask. People are like, I could never ask that. And I'm like, well, you can, and I'll help you. And, in all my time, I've only had one client come back and the friend said, no, please don't put me down. But you never know what's going on in someone's life. I just said, don't take that personally. We go to the next person. So...
And that friend being honest is really good, because taking that burden on...
You'd prefer to know now.
You prefer to know now, yeah?
Yeah.
You don't want that headache and that problem later on. I think a very interesting one that came to us was around aging parents. And, I think that the default position for especially people of my culture or of European is like, we're just, the parents will take care of them. But as our parents get older, it was one where me and my wife are looking there going like, is that sustainable?
Yeah.
And so...
Do you want to move them twice? Like, can they get 5 years done, and then how traumatic for the kids to... Yeah.
And it's around, I know my parents and her parents will do like us well because they raised us, and I see that the way that they are with their grandkids. But hang on a second, we've got people that are like got health conditions. They're only getting older. How long do we have left with them? Hopefully for a long time.
And then once you get to 3 kids, like you and I, it's a lot.
It is.
3 kids is $1 million.
It is a lot, especially at that age. And so, and then I find myself, and we did this probably like 7 years ago, and we're having the discussion now about, do we change the roles? Because the people that we did nominate back then, their situations have changed, and then to add 3 children into that scenario has then...
Not appropriate anymore.
So I'm reflecting on the importance of constantly reviewing it. And it's...
Absolutely.
And I know you've talked about this before with me about like, even if you're not changing, just bring it out like annually and just check it.
Yeah.
Sometimes people forget what they even put in there.
I think the other thing that I say is, well, first of all, I say don't tell your guardians the order that you've appointed them. I say you're one of we've got several guardians. So you give yourself some wriggle room. If life changes, or if, their parenting style reveals itself over the years to be so different to what yours is, I think that's been a really big shock for me as a parent, realising actually how individual and unique your values and your parenting is. So give yourself some wriggle room. With the grandparents, I always say if they're the right people for today, put them down. But we do layer 2. And then in the letter of wishes, we'll say, if this happens and you're too old or you have a health condition, just skip it over it. Yeah. Just say, I can't do it. I can't act. And then we go to layer 2. The other thing with grandparents that I say is, and this might be especially true for clients who have children who are older, and staying in their school community might be really important. I say maybe the grandparents are the best legal guardians. They have legal control about where your child lives, schooling, education, health. But maybe the kids don't live with them, a little bit like a boarding school relationship. And it's like, is there a family who would have them board, but the grandparents retain that legal decision making? So, I mean, like, I hope those examples just show we can just talk this out. Like, there's no substitute for chatting it out.
And that's why I wanted to talk about it, because this is the decision, like you said, that a lot of people are holding off. Yeah, it's like if you're in a normal family arrangement, from a will perspective, it's usually I pass away,
guardians.
everything goes to my husband or my wife, and then goes to
It's
the
not
kids.
rocket science.
It's you know what I mean? And then it's like, but it's then okay, cool. Now these kids have all of this money, all of this wealth. Who takes care of them? Who takes care of them? It's that layer where all the confusion and the hold up happens. But before we go into the next bit, what happens if people don't nominate?
Okay, great question. The family court just has jurisdiction over this. So, maybe another good way to put it is, what happens if I nominated my sister, but my husband's sister felt like she would be a better guardian? You know, what if she said, I don't think that Lucy's sister has a raging drug habit or she drink drives. That's not true. Anybody can make an application to the family court for parental responsibility. And, the same is true of Nick and I parenting our children. If he was behaving in a way that made him an unsafe person for our children, we can have these no contact orders and things like that. So it just goes straight back to the family law courts. You don't want to be in that arena.
No, not at all. Not at all. And especially under the circumstances which you would leave your children. They'd be grieving. They won't be emotional. Like it'd be.
They need certainty. They need certainty. Brene Brown said something like, clearness or clarity is kindness. Like, make the decision and move on. Like, you might, people say, I don't want to hurt their feelings or this or that. And I'm like, none of these appointments are vanity appointments. Executor, attorney, I'm not interested in if their feelings are going to be hurt. We are just picking the best person for the role. We've got to don't have the tail wagging the dog.
I can't help but feel, and you know that I'm passionate about what I do. I can't help but feel the people that don't do this are being a bit selfish.
You know who is just so unwavering about this? Tara Lukey. Yeah. Like, I just admire how brave she is on social media, and she will call it. She'll be like, I don't want to see your designer bag. I don't want to see your nails done. Show me your will first. Yeah. And I'm like, that's the way we live our life. Like, Nick and I you have to cover the fundamentals first. And it is selfish to your kids, to the people left behind. I can't think of anything worse than being left in a mess.
And the thing is that, as morbid as this sounds, but it's the reality, everyone's going to die. Regardless if it's young or if it's like, it's a numbers game. You are going to die. There's some certainty around that, And until you find the fountain of youth, and please let me know, you're going to die, regardless of if it's young or old. And so, why don't you address it? And so, there's always this cost barrier. I can tell you that the cost barrier. Do you know what the cost is to go through family courts and all of that to the estate and all of the stuff?
What's the cost of not doing it?
Not doing it. Now, that's financial cost, emotional cost. Like, I just never want to put my kids in that scenario. And that's why I'm saying, like, that point of view, and listeners might not like this or viewers might get completely off, but I don't really care. My thing straight up is, if you have children, it's your responsibility to take care of them. And I think that responsibility is even when you pass,
Oh, more so.
More so.
More so.
Yeah.
And to empower the people that you're leaving behind, and not just leave them with a choice of guardian, but, we'll move into it, but it's who's in charge of the money? Have you left a financial cushion? Are you underinsured? Like, really think it through. What is day-to-day life going to be like for them? I've got an invitation to do a talk somewhere in a month, and I've only got 5 minutes. And what I'm going to say is this: close your eyes and picture your family sitting around the Christmas table. You're not there. It's the first Christmas after you've died. How are things going? Did they have money for food? Who's hosting? Did they have money for presents? Was it, what was the first Christmas without you like? And in 5 minutes, that's just all I want to convey. Like, what's the outcome you want to achieve when you're gone, and work backwards. And you just have to do it.
It's an interesting point, because when I thought that, and I was taking it upon myself, my family's fine. And I have that. I'm at peace of that.
Yeah.
I'm at peace of that because I've done it. I have the measures and the backup plan that they'll never be put on.
Under hardship. Yeah. And you can die. That's peace on your deathbed.
Do you know, like...
Yeah.
But I think that's the way I live life every day. I was out there at the front of my reception at the office, and the first thing I'm doing is showing my 7-week-old kid, because My life is all about my children. And I know a lot of parents that listen to this, their life is all about their children. And this is why we're trying to convey this is around, you need to, if you're thinking about these conversations, sacrifice on other things if you have to. This is the most important conversations around your family. Your family comes first and your health, which we have been talking on previous episodes about as well. The other one that gets me as well too is in life insurance. And people don't like to be sold to, and that's why I think they don't like life insurance. Coupled with it does cost money, okay? You don't wake up every morning going, oh my gosh, I'm going to die tomorrow. We're not wired that way, okay? We are inherently like, we're not going to get cancer, we're not going to get this, we're not going to get that. Listen, if you want to look at this logically, go look at the statistics around how many people get cancer versus, and I think it's like in Australia, I think it's 1 in 3 get cancer alone, let alone the heart disease and all of that stuff. Now, we're talking about that Christmas, all right? Let's say an life insurance policy costs you $2,000 a year, okay? Let's say you've paid it for 20, 30 years and it's cost you 60 grand over that lifetime, just say. 60 grand for peace of mind that you never need to worry at that Christmas dinner. I reckon it's a small price to pay over a time. And I usually, which is fortunate in Australia, a lot of life insurance policies can be funded from super. And I often say to people this, what's the use of super if you don't make it to retirement age?
It's a good. I mean, mine's cash flowed through super.
Yeah.
That's
Think about
absolutely.
it. Yeah?
It's a investment.
Correct. So if you don't make it to retirement, you should fund it by the vehicle. So it's an insurance policy in itself. And this is why we have often structured life insurance and TPD insurance through superannuation for the mechanism in which it gets paid. Now, consequently, it also helps with cash flow. Now, I often see people come and say life insurance is a rort, we shouldn't get it.
Until you need it.
Until you need it.
Until you're the one.
And so I can't help but think about that moment it's the first Christmas after you're looking upon him and you've gone, nah, I haven't got the will done. You're looking above from him. I did everything else, but I didn't pay that insurance premium. The demand letters are on the kitchen table, and then the shelter's taken away from them, or they're changing schools,
or the surviving parents working till Christmas Eve, because they're the main earner now, sole earner.
Yeah, and I know we're getting deep with this, but it's
we could choose not to.
Yes, and then it's the awareness thing, Lucy.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like it just needs to be addressed. And I constantly see like car insurance, which is like $3,000, and then they're not getting their will done for like $1,500 or something.
Yeah. I think
just frustrating.
I think people want things to be a different way. And they don't want the statistics around cancer, or I wish I had it at the top of my mind, but the Australian Institute of Family Studies has published how many kids under 18 lose a parent. It's, not insignificant. This is happening to people. I think what they're missing and what they want is the village. And especially when we come to the guardianship question and you become a parent and then the reality sets in. It's us. It's me. And the village that you thought was going to be there maybe isn't there. Maybe life is harder than you thought it was going to be, and they don't want to meet reality where it's at. And they don't want to acknowledge, it's difficult to choose a guardian. We're not as close to people as we thought we would be. We feel isolated. We feel lonely. And same with the will. We just hope we won't die. And I'm like, just step into reality. You are doing yourself a disservice and your kids a disservice. Yes, it might be really sad, and you might have a lot of grief about the fact that grandparents might not be involved with the kids the way you thought they would. Maybe the cousins don't get together as much as you thought they would. You can be sad about that, but you still need the plan.
Yes.
And don't let that grief stop you making the best of the choices that you have. And you might think that you deserve and your kids deserve this, this, and this. Just work with what you've got.
Agree. It's a tough conversation, a tough realisation for many, but it's an important one. And I'd put this as like if you're talking about like your financial plans, financial security for you and your family is number one. Which brings me on to my next topic, because we've spent a bit on
Yeah, go.
guardianship. But a lot of people that speak to me amass wealth, obviously, over a period of time. And these are the people that have got through the security stage, they've got down the foundations, they've all sorted.
This is legacy building.
This is legacy building. This is the one where you're working your way through, you're financially free or potentially on your way to financial freedom, and you've realised and gone, uh-oh, I haven't made sure that if something happens to me, that this doesn't get leaked out to the daughter-in-law or doesn't get it leaked out to a business venture that I'm going out with. So the risk starts to go. And this happens, everyone, where you amass wealth and you're just now scared of losing it. And this is losing it through the family. So we get a lot of discussions, especially on social media lately, about things like living trusts. And I'm sure you've been getting them lately because of the US influence. And then obviously testamentary trusts as well too. So how does the trust conversation start when you're having chats to clients? And how does it help or not help that conversation around protection?
Okay, so a good way to put it is that I see so many clients who have amassed wealth and then the way that they are holding those assets is fixed. And I always say, once you're riding a horse, you're stuck on it. You can't change horses mid-race. So if you acquire an investment property at 45 and you decide to own it jointly with your spouse, and then you're 65 before you do your estate planning, and then I say to you, oh, why do you have 8 properties jointly held in both your names? That gives us very little flexibility with what we can do in your estate planning. We can't get anything to a testamentary trust. What I would love to say is if you can afford to invest, if you can afford the investment property, you can afford to go and get asset advice, structuring advice at the same time. And, you know, my husband and I have made mistakes in that regard. Like I have lived the consequence of a mistake with the way that we owned a property. And, you know, like there's nothing like having skin in the game. Now I just wish I could say to everybody, like, consider your asset protection. So I think like the main options are however you are accumulating wealth, whatever that investment is, you could have it in your name personally. You could have it with your spouse or partner as joint proprietors. That could be shares, it could be property. Or you could choose for none of you to own it personally and for it to go into a trust. And there's got to be a cost-benefit analysis. You know, we're not going to put $100,000 into a trust. But if you do go and get that advice early, then you've got choice. So a great way to think about it is I'm a human being. I have a tax file number. You have a tax file number. The trust is a separate legal entity. It has its own tax file number. So risk events that might happen to me, it could be Nick redies and I remarry, or it could be I get sued as a lawyer. Risk events that happen to me should not impact the trust assets. There's some caveats around that, like the choices we make in our drafting and how it's set up. But the starting point is, and really think about this, we're all different legal entities, and that tax file number is a really great way to think about that. It's a separate entity from you.
It's very interesting because when we talk about financial modelling with our clients and model out their financial future, I'll never forget that we were working with a client that was rapidly increasing their income, which subsequently mean that they were going to subsequently increase their asset base very, very quickly. And their starting investment balance was quite low. And yet when I did the modelling, they were going to amass like millions of dollars in wealth very quickly. And so I had to make a call and I'm like, this client needs to be in a discretionary trust because they've got young children. He'll want the distribution of income come 3-5 years from a tax perspective, but also the protection that gives his family from a legacy perspective. Because one thing is, if you do pass away and money's in a discretionary trust, what happens?
Yeah, great question. You know who's come to mind? I didn't plan on talking about it. Shane Warne. Okay. So this is awful, but when he died, all of our wills and our inventory, what we own and what we owe, assets and liabilities, are published with the Supreme Court and anybody can access them. So Shane Warne's was published. He personally had something like 20 million, but I can guarantee you he had other assets in a trust and they're not published. They're not his personal assets. So when you die, the assets inside a trust remain in the trust. They were never yours to begin with. The control of the trust is what we focus on passing. So that's why we call it estate planning. Not everything can be gifted in your will. Your trust assets, I could write them in a will and the gift would fail. And that's why, will kits and online wills. I had a client who showed me a will kit they'd filled out online. And I was like, well, this is great, but it's all going to fail because your only assets are your super and a trust. You actually own zero. So your will might not even go to probate.
And so what's the go with superannuation? Because that's obviously a very common one while you're talking about it, because a superannuation is essentially a trust at a higher level, correct?
It's a trust, yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And so that asset, so when they do beneficiary nominations, they're essentially telling the trustee how they want their money to flow down. Now there's binding, which is a binding nomination, which essentially is a legal documentation telling the super fund, I want it to go to these people. A lot of people get beneficiary nominations wrong, but we're not going to go down that path right now. But then there's non-binding, which is I request for the super fund to do it, but it's not a binding agreement. So they can make choice on your behalf if they think it's not in the trustees' rules and regulations and policies to be able to do it. So that's number two. However, in a lot of cases, you can choose your legal personal representative for that to be done. So when that passes through, does that get pointed to the will and what happens?
Correct, yeah. So you're right. A nomination to be binding has to meet some legal criteria, and that's another episode. Yeah. But your legal personal representative, your will always be a binding and a valid recipient. Mm-hmm. The reason why we always say you need individual advice, not general, don't put your LPR, your estate on your binding nomination, because the starting point is your estate will pay tax on that. Mm-hmm. So if I had a nomination to Nick, my husband personally, that's going to be tax-free. If I had it to my children, tax-free, because they meet two definitions, the Super Act definition and the Tax Act definition. If I pay my super to my estate, it meets the CIS Act definition. My estate doesn't meet the Tax Act definition. Mm-hmm. Where I pay for myself is in my wills. We have a super proceeds trust, and we say any money that comes into my estate, the provenance has come from super, is to be quarantined, and we don't intermingle it with other estate assets. And then we say ATO, we have limited the category of beneficiaries to people who met the definition of Tax Act and CIS Act. And we say, dear ATO, would you please look through the structure and give us the same tax-free treatment as if I had paid Nick personally. So now I've got asset protection and I've got the good tax treatment.
Did everyone just hear that?
It's magic.
Because
it's so good. I didn't come up with it.
But just so everyone understands, death benefits tax inside superannuation is huge money spinner for the government.
It's a death duty that we say we don't have death duties. If you muck this up, you do.
Yes, and we're amassing wealth in superannuation at a huge, huge rate. And if you're talking about keeping money in your family, we have strategies that we do for our clients to try and wash this out as much as possible. But what she just said is very important. And if you didn't listen to it correctly, rewind and listen to it again, okay? Because it is very, very important in regards to this. Now, one step back in regards to trusts, because I have a lot of them.
Good.
I have a lot of them. Maybe
because you're not intermingling assets. They would all have different risk types.
So I'm going through a bit of a restructure at the moment in regards to some of my assets, and now having 3 children and amassing wealth, I have made a decision to start segregating assets for my children that are under 7.
Oh, you've got them earmarked.
Into separate trusts. For the fact that if I stick to my financial plan, they will have significant levels of wealth, but the money will be segregated so I don't get the bitching and moaning between the 3 of them. Because I've seen so many where the bitching and moaning happens. So while I do it in regards to testamentary trust to have 3 multiple testamentary trusts, I can also have discretionary trusts while they're living, and once they're responsible enough,
you can share control.
Share control and retain as the appointor, which we'll speak about as the last moment. I don't mind sharing my stuff, but what my intention is, and please shoot me down if I'm wrong, is at one point in time, hopefully I've taught my boys or my children enough that they're responsible with money. They're good men. They're responsible citizens. And they can take care of some of the family's wealth that has been amassed over the time. Hopefully I've taught them to give back. There's a lot of things that I want them to be able to do. However, until I die, I want to retain some kind of control. Yeah. Therefore, I intend to, I have not put an age on it. I haven't defined in there 18, 21, 25, which I know people get obsessed with doing. When I feel fit, that I will make them the director of the trustee company that sits in the trust, but I will retain the appointer role. Now, I figured out that, and just for everyone to know, the appointor's role is essentially to hire and fire the trustee, essentially. So I do have kind of that godlike power in regards to the trust. However, that is my intention because I think until I pass, I never know what's going to happen with my boys. They could go the wrong way very quickly. What are your thoughts about that? Because I know a lot of people are thinking this as well too, that are amassing wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to count the stats, and I do more testamentary trusts than living trusts, family trusts, but the same concepts apply.
Correct.
Most of my clients, and I myself, but I never say that till after they've made their own choice, we're not naming the age. It's going to be different for every set of circumstances, the asset type, da-da-da. We have good people in control, and then they can voluntarily bring the kids on. What we say in my letter of wishes is it's not like when the youngest turns 21, my sister and Nick's sister step off and they just hand the reins over. We say give them a period of an apprenticeship, bring them on and do the job with them side by side for 2 or 3 years, 2 rounds of investment advice or tax returns. You can't send people in blind and hope for the best. So I'm totally on board with that, bringing your kids in. That appointer role is there to hold ultimate control. And, it sounds like you're using it to the best of its design, like the difference between appointer and trustee. Having your trustee company, fantastic, like better than personal trustees. So, yeah, absolutely. I'd really reconfirm that strategy.
And really from when I'm living, I'm really just where this idea and where this comes from is, one, my stage in life, but also is how it applies when I die. And actually, funnily enough, it was like, I'm doing it when I'm dead. Why aren't I doing it when I'm living?
Yes. Why wait? Yeah.
Why wait? Yeah. So, and the other thing is around just being aware of the conversations that I don't want to have. Like, I don't want to have the conversations where I have 2 of my sons bickering over like this property and that property, and this one's got this one. Like, our son was recently born. The first thing I did was just like bang, set him up, set his plan up straight away, and just did it in autopilot for the rest of his days. Done.
Amazing.
And I don't know if that's probably just the way I'm wired. Yeah. Most people don't do that, but I saw like get home, got his name, boom, 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 set it all up. And maybe it's because I've just seen so many problems, Lucy, which I'm sure you've seen, that I'm like super paranoid. But this is what my clients worry about, and this is what they want from us, is to look around corners they can't see. And a lot of people don't have the foresight from this. And I'm really glad we've been able to kind of dive into the conversations around guardianship, because that is one that people hold up, not getting their stuff done. And then when they amass wealth, it's around focusing on mainly, usually people, if they're business owners, it's like getting sued by someone. That's the first one. It's like sued by someone. Then when the kids start growing up, it's like, oh my gosh, the daughter-in-law or the son-in-law or the da-da-da-da-da. But not that you can fully protect it, because it's always
watertight.
It's not watertight. But if you can just start to mitigate as much as you can, as early as you can, you don't get into the situation where you talked about before, where you've got an asset that's been held there for 25 years in the wrong structure. Like, I think about it, it's like, what's the alternative? Imagine I just bought everything in mine and my wife's name. Do you know what I mean?
And rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Mine and my wife's name. Mine and my wife's name. And then my son, like we had a conversation with a client actually. I want to cover this, yeah? We were speaking to a client and they're like, oh, we've got 3 children. We want to give them $200,000 each. And I'm just like, cool, you can do that. Do you realize that they've got a partner? And you're actually giving $200,000 to the partner.
If they walked away tomorrow, yeah.
And I'm like, and they're like,
100K.
and they were shocked on it. And I'm like, well, why are you giving it to them? Like, what happens if you got 3 children and you got a $600,000 investment pool to happen and you bought an asset worth $600,000? Even if you had one trust and then had them 3 as the beneficiaries, at least you're trying to create that quarantine.
Yeah, a barrier. And options, because if you give them 200 grand and they tip it into their PPR, that's it. That's the end of the options. If you keep your options open by virtue of, even just seeking advice, and then you can say, have you thought, split test 200 grand off a mortgage versus 600 grand pulled together. Anyway, just split test things. I think people just think, you know what, they want the emotional win of being like, I helped set you up with your home, which is just, like I imagine as a parent, you can't beat that.
Yes.
Like that must be amazing, and well done to the people who can do that.
But you know what the interesting thing though, what I've been starting to do with my clients is say to them, listen, your kids in your 20s, they will scream at you, I need help for a deposit, I need help to get into the market, and you know what? It is hard.
Yeah.
But I tell you what's harder. When you have kids, you go down to one income, you're schooling your children at the same time, they will need you again, won't they? Yeah. And so a lot of my wealthy clients, and we're talking very privileged here, is they're coming in and saying to the person who goes down to one income, for example, we'll either pay for your mortgage repayments while you're returning back to work.
Amazing. Yeah. Or super or something like that. Yeah.
Or we'll keep up with the grandkids' education costs.
Yeah.
So it's because you got to remember, in the background, they're not given the $250,000 or the $200,000. So that's compounding, and the dividends or the income is then deriving. Like,
okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so the reason why we've started to do things that way with these people is because we want children and grandchildren to learn a bit of hardship.
It will help you help yourself. What you're putting in will match, or not match, but it's the effort that we can see you doing will reward.
It's the
lesson with it.
Correct. It's the lesson with it, because it's the whole. If you give away 200,000, what's stopping them from 6 months coming and going? Oh, I ran out of all of it.
And I had a great conversation with a client that you had referred them to me. And it was the same thing. They wanted to help an adult child with their mortgage, But when we looked into it, they already had trust, so fantastic. They were going to give the money from trust, but for the asset protection, they said to me, how much would a loan, if we want to document this as a loan, I think they underestimated the legal costs of doing it properly. They don't want to not do it properly. They know they have to do it properly, but then to give 100 grand, you're being told the legal fees like 5,000-7,000. It's like, it's just that sting. And the compromise that they came to, which I loved, was they found an amount of money that they as the parents were happy to lose if the relationship went wrong, because it was quite an early one. And they just said, actually, my child's marriage or relationship is theirs. I'm not going to put in place all the legals to protect them. And you would be the same. Like, we're getting a fair way into marriage now, and that's something even more invaluable than money, is working together, getting on the same page, or maybe you're figuring out you're not on the same page and you get out. But I loved that they just said, no, I've chosen an amount of money I'm happy to lose. I've gifted it. I know it's a gift. They know it's a gift. And now what they do with their relationship is up to them. If it's lost, that's done. And I loved it. I was like,
I know the exact client you're talking
oh, do you?
about.
Yeah.
Because I had heaps of conversations about it.
It was a great alternative.
Because you've got to, this client can afford to give these children whatever they want.
Yeah.
Okay. That's besides. But
they're choosing not to, which is even more powerful.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because it was. Do you go there and give them everything and teach them nothing, or give them what they need to survive, but teach them the lesson?
Yeah, and let them live their life.
Correct. And they are not going to let that child
be destitute, fail. No,
Correct.
of course not.
But it's enough for them to feel that life is not easy. And it's interesting. So when you talk about estate planning, you can see that it's not just when you die.
No, it's not a set and forget conversation. And we've talked a lot about adult children, but like the same thing comes up. I'll say to clients, tell me about your parents. Right, where's mum or dad's money for a rad gonna? If you die, do any of your siblings, can they help? No. We put in the power of attorney. I direct my attorneys to lend money to mum or dad. Like, we don't want your parents destitute. I'm seeing this so much. Like, this generation that's building wealth, they are a true sandwich generation.
I was talking to
Goes
my dad.
up and down.
I was talking to my dad about power of attorneys on the drive with him on Saturday.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I was literally saying to my father, who's still switched on, he's still fine. But I said to him, we need to start talking about me being able to make financial decisions for you, because I never know the time when that's not going to be the case. Yeah. And I know, my siblings know that I'm well equipped to make the decisions for you. Yeah. And he's always wanted that to be the case. But yeah, we are truly, the millennials are the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap things up because we can talk for hours, Lucy. But that was absolutely great. Thanks for jumping on, and we'll have to get you back on. So hopefully everyone's enjoyed that chat about estate planning and diving into some hot topics around these conversations that people are having at home. And if you like this, please follow us on YouTube or subscribe on YouTube and follow us on our socials. And this should be distributed to all major platforms like Spotify and Apple Music and stuff like that. So thanks, Lucy. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.